Hey, I'm Chip Foose. We're here at Foose Design. Today we're going to talk about one of the most popular cars with the younger generation, and that's the BMW M3 E30 from 1986 to 91. It's kind of fun when I look at this car. It reminds me of, this was 86 to 91. I graduated Art Center in December of 1990. This was one of the cars that everybody was dreaming about. And unfortunately, as a starving student, I couldn't afford this car. I had taken two Ford Fiestas that one had been totaled in the front, one was totaled in the rear. I cut through both ace posts and all the way through the floor underneath the doors, welded those two cars together. That's what I drove at Art Center. This is what I wanted to drive. I think it'd be really cool to take one of these cars and do a spin of what I might do to it. I know the first thing I would do is I'd get rid of these 9-piece hammer bumpers that are on this thing. That front bumper has so many holes and lights and different things in it. It'd be really cool to just clean everything up from the top of that bumper line, both in the front and the rear. They've got some hard angles that I think don't work with the rest of the car. I would just clean up both of those panels and maybe do a new rocker on it. But the rest of it, I'd keep that just about all stock, maybe design a new mirror for it, and let's go with a bigger wheel and a lower stance. But it's a great car to start with. We can make it better. What I'm doing right now is with these overlays, I'm just trying to get the basic car down to where it looks like the E30. And then the modifications come after that. If I'm gonna make alterations to a car, it's gonna be a real car, I'll take photos and cut them up, or I'll take pictures of a car and I'll blow it up and I'll get an exact quarter scale of a car. And then I'll cut the photo up and I'll move it around until it's exactly what I want. Before I cut up the picture, I do a line drawing of the exact quarter scale car. Then once I've repositioned everything, I take that same line drawing and I overlay it, starting out where whatever main part of the car is going to be in the same area. Then I know when I measure it, if I've moved something an inch, I'm going to move it 4 inches on the final car. But I do all my real work with real lines. So I know exactly what I did. Well, initially, I started drawing with my father when I was 3 years old. I would sit next to him when he was doing drawings because he was quite a talented artist himself. And he would do a drawing, and when he was done, he would leave it on the table, and I would draw it over and over and over again because he was my hero, and I wanted to be as good as him. And at about the age of 14 is when my ability started to surpass his ability. And then whatever it was that we were building at the shop, whatever needed to be drawn, then it became my job. Growing up with my dad and watching him build cars, I always knew that I would end up being in the car industry. I didn't know where or what it was that I was going to be doing, but I didn't think it was going to be doing custom work. I had my sights set on designing and building new cars. So I always thought that I would end up working at a car company. And I did that for a short while and quickly realized that that was not what I wanted to do. Nothing happened that soured me from wanting to work with the car companies. What it was I did an internship with a company, and I quickly saw how inefficient people were and how unaccountable they were for their time. And I just saw it as a lot of waste. That's what made me want to get out of it. In the custom car world, you're responsible for everything yourself or your employees. When you look at cars of the 80s and what characterizes those cars, you got to remember what was done just before them. And, you know, in the 70s, that's when foam core was invented, and it looked like they were designing cars with foam core. It was all hard lines and brakes and really boxy shapes. In the 80s, they started to soften up again. And what I'm doing here is taking the front and rear bumper and making them a little softer to fit with the car. When they were building these E30s to be race cars, they had to build them, it looked like quickly, because they almost went back to the 70s, and the bumpers that were on that car were really hard angles and sharp lines. What I'm doing here is just trying to make it look like the designer spent a little more time and got a little more creative and softened it to fit what the body design was. I don't want them to look like aftermarket parts. I want them to look like this is what the car should have had. So with BMW building this as a race car, you're using real lightweight parts. What I would like to do is change the shape, but use lightweight parts. Could be carbon fiber, could be fiberglass, but could even be sheet metal. That would be all determined on what the owner would want. But this is a real simple ideation sketch of what I might do with an E30. So starting out with this car, I went with a bigger wheel, brought the car down in the stance, but I've softened the two bumpers. That's really the only areas that I've worked on. I kept that flat panel in the glass, but I made it black, and then I'm adding a race car type mirror, so it doesn't have that big mirror that's sticking out. This would look a little bit faster. This is something you might find on a Daytona Coupe or a Cobra. But to me, it's much more beautiful. It's the same mirror that I used on Eleanor for Gone in 60 Seconds. I've always liked the BMW grille. I didn't touch anything up there. It's got the round lights, but when you look at the E30, it's got these rectangle shapes and everything else down on the bottom that, to me, is completely abandoning what the upper part of the car is. It looks like two different designers. So I brought round lights down into the bottom of the front fascia, opened it up, and made the same grille similar to the top. When you look at the E30, it has these bolstered fenders. And when you look at the shape, it has a flat line on the top, and it looks like, because of the angle of it, it looks like it's dropping down. What I would like to do is make the line that's flat the bottom line and have the line raise on the top. To me, it's going to make it look much more substantial and give the car a stronger look. What makes the E30 distinctive to me is the fact that it was a race car. So when you look at it, you can tell it's got some harsh looking parts on it that are meant to just go on a racetrack. If you're going to build the same car for the street, soften these things up and make it look like a street car. Give it the elegance that it deserved.